where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. Frederick Douglass.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 5, Episode 11. Night of 1,000 Stars. And welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And I'm Ben.
And we are here to dive into more of the Legend of Korra.
More Korra.
Book 2.
We're
Episode 11.
we're pretty far along in the season
this
now.
season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things are happening.
It's all happening. That was unplanned.
That worked. So we'll stop quoting Bring It On the musical and Lin-Manuel Miranda's work, and we'll go into this episode, A Night of 1,000 Stars.
Yeah. I like this.
You like this episode?
It's fine.
I don't love this. It's fine.
Yeah. It's fine.
Out of all the episodes, it's fine.
There are some moments, but generally it's fine.
Yeah. Before we get into that,
Yeah.
we've got things to talk about.
What are we talking about?
The lens, probably,
of
how
we
we're
should probably
looking
talk about
through
that.
A Night of 1,000 Stars.
Yeah, we are. We're talking about a lens. What is our lens?
Class.
Class.
We're looking at it through a lens of class.
What is class?
Right, so the definitions I took down: a set or category of things having some property or attribute in common, and differentiated from others by kind, type, or quality. Really the system of ordering a society in which people are divided into sets based on perceived social or economic status. Which I think when we think class, that's what we go into.
Yeah, I also think of like not just class status in terms of economics, but also like social rank.
Social
And-
currency almost,
Yeah, like so.
right?
Yeah. Like
Right.
Like, or that's classy.
Right, you have to have
Right?
you have to show up with a sense of class.
A sense of class, like a little bit
Right.
of elegance.
You can't show up to
Right.
a 6 p.m. wedding.
Yeah, this is
That has to be a black tie event if it's 6 p.m.
This is a high quality event.
Yes.
Right. So high quality
Pinky
comes up
out.
for mind. Yeah, pinky out comes to mind a little bit.
Cotillion.
Cotillion.
Had to do that.
I didn't.
I skipped it a lot.
I also
Wasn't very
didn't, 'cause
classy
I
of
didn't
me.
do it at all. Yeah, Sunshine, you're so classless.
Can we, let's dive in a little bit to that notion. Let's unpack that phrasing a little bit.
You're so classless.
Not even. Well, right, because an insult, you lack class,
Yeah.
which is a social construct,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, okay. Ben, if there's anyone who ignores social constructs around what
I don't
is
know what you're
classy,
implying here.
I've seen you on a Saturday night where we go out and you're like, I'm wearing gray sweatpants and a gray sweatshirt, and that's what I'm wearing out tonight. And I don't care if that's not the norm.
Is that not the norm?
I would say that there are people out there that would say, "Hey, it's not very classy of you," and you say, "Okay, I'm comfortable, I'm warm, and I'm drinking, so I'm fine."
Yeah,
right?
those all align. I don't understand what the problem is. This feels great to me.
There have also been times where we've been able to go to like concerts together, like to the theater.
To the theater.
And we've seen a musical.
Indeed, quite.
And that is another example where there are some people who would say you have to put on your best when you go to that type of event. And people would show up in suits to that event. And we'd go in PJs every now and then, partly based off of the fact that like we were privileged enough to afford season tickets.
Yes.
And so maybe a little bit of the allure of I'm going to the theater tonight was like, we're going to go see hello Dolly, and
Well-
I'm fine with it.
Well, it's also, I feel like class is a show also in a way. Like I don't feel the need to perform class, right? It feels performative. I
Yeah.
don't feel the need. If I were going on a date, perhaps I might not wear my grout fit, right?
Sure.
But like I don't see the need to impress you or worried about what other people will think of me when I walk into that space,
Mhm.
because who am I going to see that I care about, that will care about me in such a way? And if they do care about it, then I'm like, I don't know if that feels good to me, and that tells me more about them than it does about me. So that's how I,
Yes.
you know?
Right. So what we're getting at is it's a social construct that only has as much relevance as the people put into it, right? It only holds as much currency as those who are engaging with it care to give it.
Yeah, to just hark on last episode, like this feels like there's a binary of class where you either have it or you don't. And I live in the liminal space of I feel classy in my sweats.
Sure.
Take that, world.
Because what is class except, the etymology seems to dictate class is an ethical or moral state that you should be living into. You should act classy.
Yeah.
Which would mean that if you are not able to afford those things or not engage in society in that way, that would make you unethical or unmoral or wrong. And so just the adjective of classy seems to be one that perpetuates an idea that you are less than if you don't do those things.
Yeah, my first lesson in class came out in the movie Chicago, the musical version of Chicago, with a song by Catherine Zeta-Jones and Queen Latifah called Class. And there's a lot of lyrics in that that are just really speaking to this. Like, whatever happened to fair dealing, pure ethics, nice manners? Why is it everyone now is a pain in the ass? Like, whatever happened to class? And it's this lament almost that like people don't live into the expectations of the past, right? And it's interesting because to me it's like it's really important when I think about previous generations are like, kids nowadays don't have any manners, kids don't do this, do that, and things are changing, right? The world is changing.
Well, and typically the people who are saying those things are mad that a structure is being challenged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, here's a life that I've lived
I had to go through all
that
of this.
I don't want challenged because of where I am and the privileges that it allows for me. And so anybody who's challenging those things must be in the wrong, must be not classy. And again, it's a false equivalency that we're seeing. Being kind is classy. Being kind is upper class, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wrong. Those things are not connected in that way. But that's how that language gets used, and that's how we hear that language used prevalently, like very much so in the world that we're going in.
And it's lumped with some of the other lyrics in there is whatever happened to old values, fine morals, good breeding, right? Like there's a lot of things that are contestable,
Yes.
right? And so it's just really interesting to consider how conflated, like, quote, old values are with our current conception of what class is. And I think that's just important to consider in this conversation.
Well, yes. So as we go forward and understanding that things like morals, ethics, right and wrong are not dictated by social economic classes that are put on us by
your ranking in society, if there is one.
And so we'll see a little bit of that today as we go through that. But before we feel like we've still got a good place of
I feel like I have a
class in the
handle
lens
on
that
it.
we're
Yeah.
in. I now
I'm not an expert on it.
No, as which is true of so many things.
Pretty much everything.
I am not an expert in a lot of this, so we'll talk through it. Something that's interesting and that we can talk about before we get into the episode is as I was kind of like looking into my research, one of the studies that popped up for me that seems like it could be applicable into this episode is a group of scholars did a series of tests, essentially flashcards, just generic kind of like intelligence quizzes, things like that that were taking place. And they had a slew of people participate in those things. And then they measured how well they did and how well they thought they did on those things.
Okay.
Signifiers like financial status, educational status, upbringing, family structures and dynamics. People who had more privileges or higher rankings in those things across the board
Thought they did better.
viewed themselves as more capable than others, thought they did better than others, based off of those factors, regardless of what the data actually pointed to, which was a pretty randomized assortment of some people were better at flashcards because they were better at memorizing and flashcards. Some people were better at questionnaires and trivia questions because they just happened to know that material. But it was pretty randomized across the subset of people that were participating in these studies, but overwhelmingly people who were richer, people who were more educated, people who had a higher status in their society, from a pretty mass amount, were saying that they were more capable and more likely to do better than others. So it was an exaggerated belief that they are more capable than other people just based off of their class status, which I think is a super interesting thing to lift up.
Yeah.
So
I believe that. I'm not surprised by that data at all.
Ready to jump into the episode.
Maybe it's because of my privilege that I'm not surprised by that.
Maybe.
Uh-oh.
Right?
Yep. All right, so we are moving into the content of the episode, which means we need to recap it. And by we, I mean you.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
No.
On your mark.
Yep.
Get set. Go.
Tenzin and Korra return and share that Jinora is trapped in the spirit world. Bolin sees Mako headed as he heads to the finale of Nuktuk and brings Mako a poster. Southern Water Tribe embarks in a battle with the Northern Water Tribe at the Southern Water Tribe. Red carpet event with famous people. It includes President Raiko, where Varric wines and dines him and his family. Varric presents some movers and pleads for a hero. Waterbenders attack the theater, tries to kidnap the president. We also see a fight with Tonrock and Unalak, and things go haywire, and the president won't help.
Ding! That was great timing.
Yeah. A lot of fighting in this episode. Again, helps us have to recap.
You were able to cover a lot just because of the... And then they fought. And then moved on. Okay, great. Great. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, that covers the episode. So
Let's
this has
talk,
been Not Breaking.
Moments of class.
One
of the first things that pops up to me is the way that we see Mako treated.
Tell me more.
So yes, as viewers, we all have varying opinions on Mako's behavior.
Indeed.
With people coming back and relationships that happen and people being angry with each other and maybe not being honest. And despite those things, or yes, and those things, we're not there. We see Mako treated differently by his peers on the police force, by the way that Varric is easily able to frame him. And I think a lot of that is because of where he comes from.
I agree.
Right? So he for survival purposes, when he was younger, had to work alongside the triple threats. That made it very easy for them to be like, your old pals, the triple threats, look at you. We even see Bolin make claims to his language of like, well, you're a criminal. Like, you look like a criminal. You're where criminals are. And you do criminal things and criminal, right? And so we see, and that's his own brother who is navigating a similar space, but yet a very different space now.
Yes,
in this
very
season.
Different.
But we see that it is easier for them to pin him as a villain, to pin him as a criminal, to frame him, and for Varric to be the lead force into that. And I think class and the power dynamics that play between them are one of the big factors of why Mako is in that space to begin with.
Yeah, I think the ability for Varric especially, because we hear from Varric that says, and I put you in jail, right? And this is...
I did it.
He
used
admits
his wealth and influence to be able to do that.
And I don't think that... I think rather that because Mako has no capacity to defend that, right? He has his like goodness and like, rule following attitude makes it so that he's like, okay, I'm going to jail. I disagree with what you're doing, but like,
But
I'm
how
going
am
to
I
do
supposed
it.
to change this
But
right
how
now?
exactly? And then also, I think that he comes from a position where he does not have a lot of money. He comes from a position where his social clout isn't very high. He's coming from a position as the, rookie and grunt worker on the police force, and so it's easy for everybody to take advantage. So not only is power a factor here, but financial capacity, and all of those are a factor in, our imagining of class.
Now, and compare that with the way that he shows up when he tells Asami and Bolin that Varric's behind all of this and the way that they react. Why he helped me with my business. He helped me do this. He helped me do these things with his finances and power. That he has to be good, right? Like he did these things.
He hired me to be a mover,
right? Exactly. And so we also see the difference in the way people respond based off of assumed morality in connection with things that are financial and class status, right?
Yeah.
We see that. Oh, Bezos can't be all that bad. He donated $50K to this university.
It's like me donating 50 cents.
Right. Well, a recent article has come out that says
actually
in the last 2
years,
years,
less than that.
In the last 2 years, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, has donated more to nonprofits than Bezos has donated in his entire life.
Yeah.
And she's worth much less than he is when it comes to that type of stuff. But we see how we connect, like the ability to shroud things with finances or performative actions.
Yep.
But when you're in an upper class situation, makes people view it differently than they would someone else giving their time, money, effort, right? Like
people are more. It's almost like it's permanent rosy-colored glasses that are on when someone has privilege and wealth, right? It's like, oh, they have this, they must be doing something good because our culture values financial capital as a good. You are morally good if you have more capital because you earn capital based off of what you do, and what you do is generally something. So like people who do more, get more, have more. It's the American dream. It's like all of these things perpetuate this belief that having this class in terms of finance means that you are better than.
Mm-hmm. And we see people defend those things even if they think that the structures are not fair or not do not have equity throughout the consequences that those structures have. You see people defend them when it benefits them. Asami, Bolin are both receiving the benefits of Varric and his wealth. And so they are way less likely to see Varric as being the villain, and they are more likely to see that their brother did something wrong or their boyfriend did something wrong, even though they're in relationship with Mako.
Yeah.
We get pieces. Asami can't come visit. It reminds her too much of her dad.
Yeah.
Right? And so even though Asami has a relationship with Mako, Bolin has a relationship with Mako that's arguably stronger than their relationship with Varric, I think that you could argue that the class status shapes the way that they view Mako versus Varric.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying it's the only thing, and that's the reason, but I think that we would
be remiss if
we didn't say that wasn't a factor.
Yeah. So I want to shift focus a little bit to Bolin, because his interaction with Mako in this prison cell is
strange.
It makes me feel really uncomfortable, because why is he going in this room in the first place? Like I don't get it, because it seems as though it's very self-serving.
Right, it's not, I want to come visit you, Mako, to see you and see how you're doing.
I want to come and give you this poster of me.
Because it's guaranteed to cheer you up.
Yeah, and it's like the language he uses is really weird, because like it just feels like he goes and says, "Oh, I want to be sincere," and it's sincere my butt. It feels like he doesn't believe Mako at all. He truly, like, he goes on and is like, "Oh, like, you're gonna really win with this, asylum defense," and he's like talking himself into believing Mako is actually a criminal here, and it feels like he's trying to justify it in his own mind, and it feels like, why go in the first place? Like, I genuinely don't know.
Yeah. Yes, and have we not all been in a position where we've done something under the guise of we're helping someone else, but in reality it's self-serving? Like when you dig deep enough into it, have we not all been in that situation before?
Man, this feels... I don't know that I've done this. This feels egregious.
Like this, right? Like
I feel like I can live in that space where I have done things that I wanted to help, but it was really to ease my own comfort and discomfort, rather.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where this feels like egregious.
Right.
It just... And so my question is...
And it might be, yeah.
My question is class playing a role here? And I think my assertion is the answer is yes. Because, Mako and Bolin are coming from the same space, right? They're both coming from poor histories in terms of finances. They're coming from having to work with street gangs. They're coming from this place where one might suggest that class is not high in terms of their class. And so now that Bolin is kind of tasting what it's like to have class, so to speak, I wonder how quickly this has tainted his history, and I wonder how much I guess that's my question. Is Bolin's newfound fame and fortune, has this changed him to the point that he is now truly acting without regard and without thinking about his history? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so part of the study that we referenced earlier is this idea that privilege begets privilege, right? So, but what people who are continuously living in that space are starting to find is that you forget that there are people that have gotten you there, that there are privileges that have gotten you there, and you start to think that you were the one that was capable enough to get there. You were the one to be a part of that. You're the one who did the work to get you there.
And we've heard this narrative with Bezos again, just to lift that up.
Pull
right?
yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Had nothing to do with the fact that he was given a $300,000 gift from his parents, right?
Already illustrating that
it was very different than someone saying, I started Amazon with nothing in my pockets. Well, you had $300,000 in your pockets.
Yep.
Bolin's kind of in that space, right? He is now in the upper echelon.
I earned this. I deserve being here.
And this is where we kind of get to, did Bolin do hard work? Yeah, I'm sure that on the sets of those films, he put in effort, and it was hard and tiring, and he had to memorize lines, and it wasn't like you can do hard work, but that doesn't erase the privileges that also played into getting you to that space. Most celebrities come from wealth. Majority of them come from wealth. The self-made artist is typically a pretty big myth that doesn't exist. And so I think what's happening with Bolin is as we equate some of these things to goodness, if I have to believe that my situation wasn't what got me here, I also then need to believe that their situation wasn't what got them there. So for me to believe that my choices were what got me to being rich because I don't want to acknowledge that there are outside privileges affecting that, I then have to assume that Mako's decisions and not his environment put him into this situation.
Which is really interesting because that really reminds me of our conversation last episode again with navigating these spaces especially with Korra, who was navigating the fact that means that even in the darkest places, there's sometimes going to be light. And even in the lightest places, there's going to be dark, right?
These binaries don't exist. It's not either or.
Everything is liminal.
Right? Depending on which philosopher you ask, yes.
Yeah.
Some would say no, nothing is liminal. But I think what you see this is it's not just my decisions got me here. It's my decisions and the help of others and the support of others and the people who provided me housing and the people that helped me provide food. Like, all of those things got me here. But again, if you truly believe that I'm the reason I'm in this space, then that must mean that they're the reason they're in that space, and it has nothing to do with environment.
Yeah.
And that is a false binary that we have to push back on at all times. Because it's also not just completely your environment that leads to those things, right?
Yeah.
But we know for a fact that environment plays major factors in our decisions and the way that we have to navigate the spaces around us.
Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah, Bolin is struggling, and I think we can see that part of that is he's been thrusted into this upper echelon and is now trying to act accordingly.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like.
So, that's interesting. So, like, the pressure of this newfound space is also like, oh, I have to live into this in order
you don't want to lose
this,
it, right?
Right?
People fight to not lose
power,
the power that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that means that I have to act this way to not lose it, right? I mean, it's a trope for rich kids on television shows, right? Parents saying,
yeah, it is.
If you have to do this way, or else you're cut off.
You're cut off from your trust fund.
Right. Jennifer Aniston and
Friends.
I'm sure it happens on Gossip Girl. I didn't watch Gossip Girl, but I'm sure there are moments of that.
I don't remember if they get cut off.
Happens in the OC. Love the OC.
It happens a lot.
But we see those moments of you're going to lose all this if you don't make this decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's part of it. We also can talk about how class allows people to believe that they're above the world around them.
Ooh. I have a person in mind. Who do you have in
Varric.
mind? Oh, yeah, that's good. I was also going to say the president.
Yeah, well, yeah. And here's one of those things, because if we look at the president, right, he's got a structure that puts him into a place of power.
Yep.
He's overseeing Republic City.
He does.
If Republic City falls, where is his power?
Gone.
And so he's going to view and make decisions, and this is what we see, based off of what he believes is going to protect his system, and he doesn't view the fall of the Southern Water Tribe as going to have an effect on his system.
Well, no. I think that his words said that, like...
Oh, we have to be prepared to
We have to be prepared to defend this city, right? My priority is this city. Whereas the things that happen out there, like, I need to be prepared for when that comes here.
Which, that's a whole episode on a different ethical argument.
Yeah, I agree. So,
because I don't think he's wrong.
Because what's the question? So the question is for the president of the United States, for instance, what is like, and this
their
is
responsibility
like foreign
to
policy.
help.
There's a whole like cabinet based off of this.
You got to tell you,
and where's the responsibility
know
lie?
Very little about foreign
right?
policy.
Where does the responsibility lie? Is it the quote greater good of serving the world, or I need to prioritize my citizens? And the answer is always, oh my goodness, we need to talk about this with a bunch of people and make sure that but like, because it's not easy to make that decision.
It's not, no.
But it seems like, and I don't know, maybe the generous assumption is that he has had this conversation with a team of people, but it seems as though Raiko's making this decision
by himself.
And that
seems
feels,
that way.
That feels
wrong.
Icky. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if the decision is wrong. I don't live in those spaces.
Well,
I don't know if I have the, like...
Because it's the borderline of, like, performativity as well, where it's like, I'm going to, I'm going to bolster up so that we are defending ourselves, but where's the, like, I don't know where the moral line is of, like, I've sworn into my oath to this city. Have I sworn my oath to the greater good of the world, right? Like, there's part of it is oaths, part of it is ethics for the world at large. There's part of, like, there's just a lot going on that needs to be considered here.
Even when you're looking at this moment through classism, though, and class, President Raiko's in one position to send others off to war.
Correct.
Which is a demarcation. Like, who typically fights in war? Who is typically recruited to be warriors? Who is typically recruited to be in armies? It's not the upper class.
It's usually because a lot of times the Army is known for paying for education, right? And so you get to go to college for free if you serve, right? And so it often recruits people that are in positions of hardship rather than people who are genuinely interested. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of people who are genuinely interested in serving, but
and there are people who are
troubling.
experiencing hardships that are also genuine. Like, it's
Yes,
not again,
exactly.
as we talk, their binaries are not existent in that way, but typically recruitment for at least our military is heavily done in high schools and recruitment centers that are put up in poorer neighborhoods
formative
and things
years
like that to say, hey, this is a way that you can pay for X, Y, and Z. It is typically poor people being sent off to fight the battles of the rich, to maintain the power that is being held by the rich.
Yeah.
And I think that we can't ignore that is what would likely be the case in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with Varric as well, we see his ability to make decisions based off of the fact that he's got the wealth to do it,
and
the resources to do it, and the connections to do it, that all come with a sense of how many more people are willing to help Varric as a chance to get a part of his wealth, as a chance to be a part of his inner circle.
Absolutely.
We see people say yes to Varric earlier in the season because of his class status. And that's when Bolin comes in and be like, he's not levitating.
Yeah.
But we see a room full of people tell him that he is, as a way to be a part of that class status.
Yeah.
So the connections, the finances, his ability to navigate the space around him is different. One of the concepts that has been brought up before as we talk about our own justice system is that laws whose consequences are fines are only enforceable to poor people.
Yeah.
Or to people who do not have the means to pay those fines.
Yep.
It is only a deterrent for those individuals. Because what's a speeding ticket to someone who has no problem paying it off?
Yeah.
What's a bail to someone who has no problem paying it off?
Yep.
And so for Varric, we get that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
We even see the privilege with Varric of people who don't like him feeling like they need to compromise with him because he has the finances, the resources, the ways to get what they...
Because it's dangerous to go against Varric.
Right.
Right? As it is often dangerous to go against people of significantly higher, quote, class status than you, right? And like, yikes. It's a lot.
Any other points we want to bring up?
Yeah, I want to talk about this moment, and this is just an interesting moment that I didn't quite pick up on my first watch through, and it leaped out at me this time. So this moment where all of these people who are watching the mover are in the pro bending stadium, and we get, snapshots of everybody in their box, and the president and his wife are in like the, presidential suite, right? They have the
little hoity-toity pinky out.
The pinky out box. And, they've dressed up for the occasion, and
red carpet from the Fire Nation because they make good red things.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's this moment in the movie where the character of the president is like, I want to help people. And then the wife leans over and says, this mover's, really interesting, but you know what? They got one thing right. That president's character is right on the money. And I found that to be really interesting because I would not have described Raiko as that way. And it's really interesting because my view is kind of tainted. It's tainted by what we have seen in the show, what we will read in the comics. And his wife sees him as, wow, you care about people, and I see that in you. And so I'm curious how, this is a relationship in which, theoretically these two are on equal footing, right? Not necessarily by literal rank because he's the president and she's his wife, and without necessarily, political rank, so to speak. But I'm curious about like class interaction in personal relationships, especially between, significant others. And I'm just curious. I found that a really endearing response that she was able to see the potential in him as well as. So I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think one thing that's worth highlighting is that as much as because I already can say that I feel like we've been painting a picture of upper class not necessarily great.
Yeah.
Which isn't, there's morally, ethically
problematic.
Well, there's no way to make a marcation in the line, draw a line in the sand that says, like, if you are making X amount of money, if you are upper class, you are immoral, right?
Yeah, I think we can look into Asami that and just be like, everybody loves Asami.
And we've also talked about light in the dark, dark in the light.
Yep.
And I think that all of that exists. I think two things potentially happen in these relationships because, one, there's a potential that Buttercup Raiko sees the best, again, is ignoring structures that are in place that are benefiting her. So there's a possibility of that. She also is in relationship with and can genuinely have moments of seeing these things in the person that she's in relationship with. She's close to him. She sees him interact daily. And so there's also a reality of, is Buttercup seeing things that we are not seeing? Because I would say Raiko is back and forth, right? He is not, I don't know why I always, envision President Raiko as being the same person as Wrath in
Pride.
What's Full Metal Alchemist?
Yeah, in Full Metal Alchemist, it's Pride, and Full Metal Alchemist,
Brotherhood. It's Wrath. I view them as the same character in my head. They get mushed together because they look very similar. Bradley and Raiko are not the same, but they
look similar.
They do look similar. But what I'm saying is, he is really just a politician, and so there are going to be moments where you're like, yeah, I like that decision, and there's going to be moments with Raiko where you're like, you are doing that for the wrong reasons. And again, it's not this binary, and so I think this Buttercup right here is highlighting that getting to know people, or I'm losing the thread. I think Buttercup is highlighting that there is an ebb and a flow that comes with the way that we engage with the world around us, and it is not necessarily either you are good or you are bad, but it is a space of, I can see these things in you, and you do this, and this time you didn't do it, and I don't feel great about that, and there's an ebb and a flow that comes with it.
It seems like there's more grace when we are in relationship and can actually know the person and their values, what they care about, and then see that their actions in response. And when we know them, like it's hard to hate people close up, right? It's one of those things where the more you get to know them and get to know, and that's why they have this, there's this trend of like complicated villains where like people are making, really easy to kind of understand. And that's why all of these villains in Korra are, maybe Unalaq aside, but easy to understand and grapple with and agree with. There's a lot of people who listen to Zahir and are like, I don't hear a problem.
I don't hate everything
that he says. Same thing with Amon.
Don't want you to
right?
murder Korra, but
it's the same thing with Amon, right? There's a lot of people who are like, dang, that's legit. And so it's one of those things where once we hear the stories of these people, we start to realize the reasons behind it, and it creates empathy and greater understanding. And I think it's just illustrating that class is similar, right? When we get to know people, class dissolves.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm arriving at, is that
it's a construct. It is a social construct that means nothing and everything at the same time.
Yep.
Right? Like, it means nothing. It has no effect on your sense of being able to create strong relationships and your ability to be enough and your ability to love and support others. It means everything in the way that we engage with the world around us.
Yeah.
A ticket for having a license plate that is old because you weren't able to afford the taxes on the license plate, but so you get doubled down with an additional ticket for it.
Yep.
Is very different to someone who is in that position than someone who is like, oh yeah, I just forgot to change my tags and I've got the excess money to deal with it, right? Those are two very different things. And so it means nothing and it means everything at the same time.
Here.
And you can't erase the fact that Buttercup is benefiting from the systems that are in place that
Yeah.
has that power. And so maintaining that by creating a positive environment for President Raiko in her mind might be something she's looking to do.
All right. Can I go to a different spot?
Yeah.
Can we talk about Tonraq and Unalaq?
God, I hate Unalaq.
Yeah, it's just so bad. Yeah, so...
I need to know how people are freezing each other
And staying
and
alive.
staying alive. We saw it with Azula.
It was just for a little bit.
Yeah, like Tonraq's a little bit different because he got like frozen and then immediately like Super Saiyan punch through it.
Yeah.
Azula was stuck in it
Yeah,
with
but
her eyes able to move.
it was really enough to get... I think that probably took like 30 seconds, right? Because it was one of those things where Katara melted enough for her to get around and to get the chains around Azula, and then I imagine that the ice came down, right?
That's true. The ice does come down pretty. It's not like she's
Like,
stuck in it
people
forever.
can hold their breath for a little bit.
And I mean,
It's
yeah.
a lot. It is.
As long as you don't start inhaling water, I guess.
Yeah, but it's frozen. You can't inhale at all. I think it's just a matter of like you can't breathe for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But still scary.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about Unalaq and Tonraq because there's a little bit of a class difference between these two.
A perceived one for sure.
Yeah, for sure perceived. And the one that I'm kind of pointing to is like the Northern Water Tribe is...
My papa drives an Aston Martin.
Yeah, the Northern Water Tribe seems to have a bit more money, seems to have a bit more perceived...
Which is, we saw that in Avatar.
Yes.
Like, Southern Water Tribe is rebuilding.
It's like, these are the podunk villages down here.
Correct.
And then up north is like, oh, a city, right?
It's the Hilton Head versus, like, the Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. But yes. And so it's one of those things that's important to pay attention to in terms of the relationship between North and South, right? And we get a little bit more, that's expounded more in the comics, North and South. But in general, this is really interesting because Unalaq wields that privilege and power, and in a way that Tonraq does not. Tonraq is still the chief, but there still seems to be this added like humility that keeps his position or class rank, so to speak, in check. And so I'm curious just what your take is on that, and then because I have a theory that humility is the answer to everything, but it seems like humility is a tool that Tonraq has in his tool belt that allows him to navigate his position in the Southern Water Tribe differently than Unalaq does in the Northern Water Tribe.
Yeah, I think humility and empathy, like Tonraq has experienced what it's meant to be isolated, to kicked out, have nothing, to travel to the Southern Water Tribe and build a life starting from legitimately nothing. His actions are always seem to be community-based, not legacy-based, right? Like it happens to be that his daughter's the Avatar, super cool, very proud. But we see him even engaging when, like, do we need to start a civil war? His processes as he's thinking are rooted in
He's always checking with people.
Community-based. And he's checking it with people.
Yeah.
And he's in conversation with them. And they act without him, and he gives grace. And, I think there's a little bit in the way that what is the intent that you have when you are engaging in work, right? When you are engaging as a leader, we're seeing Tonraq as a leader and Unalaq as a leader. One is to maintain power. One is to maintain a class structure that they believe in that is, and as we've, again, pointing back to that study, I am better. People who are doing these things are better and more capable to be able to create a world that's positive. So you need to listen to us. We're the upper class. You're letting things get out of hand versus communal leadership. What is in support of the people that are in this community? How are we better serving them? So the intent around those types of leadership are very different and yield different results.
Yeah.
Power with versus power over.
And I think that is an important question anytime class is in the picture, right? I think that you can't discuss class without discussing power also. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a great example why these two is giving us that.
Yep.
Right. And, also Varric and Raiko. But, like, it's one of those things where, like, it's
Because that, again, power with and power over, where, like, Raiko might be making a power over decision.
yeah.
He might be making a power with decision. Varric's making a power over decision.
Yeah.
His decisions are what is best for me, my company.
Yep.
Because Varric wouldn't have saved Future Industries if it didn't benefit him. Varric
doubtful.
wouldn't have put Bolin in to Movers if it didn't benefit him.
Agreed.
If he couldn't sell it.
Yeah.
Right? He tried to get Mako on his side for it to benefit him. Couldn't. So he moved him out of the way.
Yeah.
Right? So in our leadership, as we are working with others, power with or power over, what is driving our decision-making process? Are we here to move forward as a group, as a community, for what is better for all of us? Or are we here to make a decision based off of what is better for me and damn everyone else?
Wow. All right. Well, I've had a few moments. Do you have anything before we move on?
No, I think we hit anything. I mean, I'm amazed that some of the people are living after the battle inside of the arena. We saw like 2 foot thickness of rock hitting someone in the chest hard enough to lift them up 3 stories and then into water. And yes, we've seen things like this before, but like,
just
that person should
brought
be
it up
dead,
again.
right?
Yeah.
Like dead.
No, he can swim.
See, the amount of like pain that people must be taking when they get hit with the earth bending things in a pro bending match, because those.
It's like a solid piece of
rock.
rock.
Yeah, it's not like paintball.
Yeah. But also, like, I think about, that person who took the 2-foot stone to the chest also, like, did a profound backflop into the water as well, which, listen, I have accidentally done a flop off of a high dive, and it hurts. So, yikes.
Yeah, so other than that, like, yeah. And again, we can assume within the world that we're in that maybe there's just different laws of physics that take place.
Yeah, that's believable. All right.
But yeah.
Well, here we are. We've talked about class. We've talked about,
Do you see Bolin?
Oh.
Because this is interesting. I wonder if this plays out. Because now that I'm thinking about it, Bolin rips his suit when he goes to fight. Do you see that as a way of them saying, like, he is stripping away that... He's like giving away that class and ripping through it to go back to what feels moral or ethical, or am I reading too much into that?
I definitely didn't take it that way, but like I like what you're doing. I think metaphorically, it's interesting that as he attempts to do good and do,
it means that he is having to literally rip away.
He has to take off
the performative drippings that are a part of that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm gonna have to
think on it,
marinate on that a little bit. If you have thoughts,
off the top
listeners,
of the dome.
Yeah, if you have thoughts, listeners, feel free to send us a voicemail. It feels like we should probably stop asking for those because nobody sends them in.
Yeah, what's going on, everyone?
We miss those.
We do miss those. Send us a voicemail, thearkofe@gmail.com.
I'm gonna start making pointed asks to patrons and be like, "Hey,
send one in.
Send one in.
You know who you are."
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know.
Write a review. You know who you are.
Okay.
Cool. Well, this has been an awesome conversation so far. Again, Ben and I are experts on this, and so I think I would love to revisit class in a future episode. Yeah. With someone who really has a better understanding of those dynamics than the two of us. If you know anyone who might be great at that, I think that's a conversation Ben and I would love to have, because there are definitely things we might be wrong about.
Yeah.
But we're here to learn and we're here to grow. But
send us names at bnb_pod or thearkofe@gmail.com.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be right back after this short break, and we'll follow it up with our gratitude, our devotion, and that other segment that doesn't have a name yet. welcome back from our break. We are jumping into the next segment.
We are.
We are calling Hot Seas and Cold Seas.
I was just going to go with hot and cold.
I like Hot Seas and Cold Seas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one's which?
I like when it's... I don't know. That's a great question. I like both the warm and the cold sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm
We're going to
asking.
say warm. We like when our bodies are warm, even in the cold. We're going to say that's a good thing.
Okay.
And the cold is...
Like frigid.
And it's out there. Yeah, because even though I like the cold sometimes, I want to be warm when it's cold.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
So we're going to call it hot seas and cold seas, warms and colds, however we want to word it. We'll figure it out.
All right.
What is your... Let's start with your cold.
My cold.
What is your cold?
Ginger.
Okay, tell me more.
So, throughout the whole series to date, she has been anti-Bolin off screen. And, for good reason.
Setting firm boundaries.
He's pursuing her. She does not want him.
She says no.
She says no multiple times.
Very clear.
And, as then Bolin does this heroic thing outside of the movie, and it feels very opportunistic that she says, "So silly, Bolin. We, of course, were dating." And I think that's sad.
It kind of points to classism and class structure being something that is admired, right? Bolin did something that was revered and is going to help him boost his clout, and I want to be a part of that, is what it feels like.
Yeah, it feels the word that comes to mind is opportunistic, and I don't love it. I used to get opportunist as my descriptor on Super Smash Brothers, and I didn't like that either.
Always sneaking in for the
final blow after someone's damage has been dealt by somebody else, and yeah. Anyway, not a fan. So that moment froze me out a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, I had it. I lost it. Hold on. What did I say to you earlier?
You were not happy about Mako.
That's right. Thank you. Mako and Korra and Asami and Mako's inability to be honest at the end of this episode, very frustrating.
It's pretty bad. Because
you can sit there and say, hey, we've got a lot to talk about. Now might not be the best time, but we've got to talk about some things. You need to be honest in that moment. And yes, we've all been in a spot where we've kind of been caught off guard and have frozen as a reactionary measure, but super frustrating to see him hurt Asami and then know he's going to hurt Korra.
You see Asami's
as well.
reaction, and it's just really...
He even looks over at her. He glances. It's not like he's not aware.
Yeah.
Which is it's such a cruel thing to sit there and say, I've been back in a relationship with this individual, and I'm going to actively ignore or do something that is going to harm them is a tough decision to make. I don't like it. The sympathy and empathy I had for Mako at the beginning of this episode versus the end, very different feelings I have about him.
Yeah, and so that kind of plays into my high, actually, my warmth, my hot seas. I think what
my hot seas.
Yeah.
I
actually really felt like Mako's welcome back from Lynn and the police force, but also from his Carrot family, and when they recognized that he was right, and they recognized that he was right all along, that he had been wrongfully imprisoned, and not everybody does that, right? And I found that moment to be really heartfelt, which Mako ruins it, of course, but it's this moment was really
nice until then.
I had an awe moment, and I was like, oh wow, that's special.
Aww.
All right, what makes you all hotsy?
I love the moment where Bolin steps out of the premiere or the finale to think about everything that's going on. I'm always here for some reflection. I'm always here for some questions being asked of, am I doing the right thing? Even if the answer is, you continue on that path, but I'm here for that type of reflection. And so that's a moment I like.
Here.
Take time to think about what you're doing.
reflection.
Absolutely.
I love it.
All right, devotion.
Devotion
Through the element
time.
of fire.
Yeah.
So we're looking at class through fire.
Class through fire. Ooh, wow. What are you doing? What's your intention?
Yeah, I think for me, I need to recognize when the systems that are in place are warming me and burning others.
Ooh.
And I need to act to stop those things.
Wow. Wow.
And so even if it is burning, even if it is warming me, if in the process it is harming others, then that's not a system that I want to be a part of.
Yeah, you don't want to be like, oh, wow, this fire's so great.
Wow.
And
that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right? That is because it's dismantling your own biases and and honestly letting go of things that you are privileged by. Is not an easy thing to ask people to do.
Yeah.
But for us to
stepping into that liminality, right?
To create a better future, we have to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the work that I want to focus on this week.
Wow. I love it. Mine's pretty similar, except I'm taking it a little bit more destructive. I just want to burn it all up. I like
burn it
down with the patriarchy, down with capitalism, down with class, burn it all down. There's this moment where it's just like I am constantly ebbing back and forth between we can make it better, we can get like, and then this like burn it all to the ground because it's broken and we just need to start from scratch. And
these sentiments are awesome, right?
Yeah.
And require action. And I think that's the part on the back end of this that we have to ensure that we're doing is work to get after this because as much as one of the most frustrating things right now is seeing ads from the Democratic Party candidates saying like, you have to vote. Our future depends on it. And it's like, yeah.
We did.
We're doing those things. You've done nothing.
Yeah.
Like what?
We did.
So like
we have.
And then they're like, and then they say, and your life matters. Black lives matter. And you're like, are you doing anything about it? No.
Yeah.
Right. Like we have to. The action has to be there.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it.
Yeah.
Of saying these things and then not doing anything about it. And so. That's the other step of this is...
Yeah, which is why we set these intentions, right? This is like a chance for us to be, for redundant sake, intentional, right? And we want to make sure that we are thinking and considering before we act, rather to make sure that we do act.
Yep.
And, that's one of the things I love about this podcast is that it forces me to kind of take that one step at a time and create an intention every week.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm just sitting in this space of wanting to burn it down, and I want to get to a space where I have been able to put that aside a little bit and actually set reasonable, smart goals that are actionable. Because right now I'm in a space where it doesn't feel like it's actionable. And so I don't know that I have a specific follow-up to that. I want to name that I feel like I want to burn it down, and then I want to reflect on that this week and figure out what's next.
Yeah. Let's do it. Work to be done. Gratitude.
Oh, I love it. I love gratitude.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for Asami in this episode.
Ooh, tell me more.
And it's actually in response to your...
my cold seas.
Your hot seas with Bolin and Reflection.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for Asami because she notices that Bolin walks out and notices his expression and is tending with care to her friend.
Yeah.
And, I think I read somewhere that someone treated those moments where, there's a description of, I think it's in a Brene Brown book somewhere, but...
Again, almost a full episode.
But it's not a Brene Brown quote. It's in a Brene Brown book.
Brene Brown up.
But
we were at the very end. We were even further along in this episode.
Chill. I'm sensing a lot of judgment. Okay.
You were so close.
But here's the deal.
Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart, new book out. Not sponsoring us.
Yeah.
Haven't read it yet. Don't know if it's good.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a moment in one of her books where It's called a sliding door moment, in which somebody is like reading their mystery novel. It's getting good. And I imagine that's how Asami feels. Oh, this movie, it's getting good. And wow, we're getting to the high moment. And she has an option to either continue watching or to go tend to her friend. And you really want to watch because it's like getting good and you want to get to that ending. But you have to choose what's more important in that moment. And that's called like a sliding door moment. And she chooses Bolin. And I think that's really beautiful because I know that there have been times when I have not chosen the way that I wish I had now. So I find that really beautiful that she chose her friendship in that moment because it was a nice lesson for me.
Yeah.
Gratitude.
Super
cool.
I'm going to give mine to Tenzin.
For what?
I can't imagine how hard it has to be to use all the best I think he used the best information and did with that information the best choice that he could, which was letting Jinora go into the spirit world.
Oh, this is so hard. You're right.
So, but he blames himself. He doesn't blame Unalaq for kidnapping his child. He blames himself for putting his child in that position.
Yeah.
To have to come back to your partner and express that your decision put your child in harm's reach is unfathomably difficult to me.
Yeah.
And so to allow him a space to be seen, I know that's a feeling that parents have felt before in their lives. To give space that for those feelings and those emotions and for that grief, and I just want to lift him up, and so I'm sending my gratitude towards Tenzin, because I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he made the best decision.
Well, and he's also grieving himself still, right? This is really hard.
So.
I accept that. I accept your gratitude. It's wonderful.
That's our episode.
That's the episode.
That's it.
We did it.
Thank y'all so much for joining us today. If you want to follow us on all of the things. BNB_pod. That's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
All the things.
Bending Not Breaking on Facebook and on Patreon. Check those things out.
Highly recommend writing a review if you feel so compelled. It helps us a great deal when you do. And if it's super cool, we'll read it on the show.
Yeah.
So
we do monthly live episodes. We're re-going through season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender right now. If you want to join into that, hop on Patreon.
Any and all of our patrons have the option to join us for that live episode, no matter what level you are giving.
We do that monthly, and we're getting to the season finale. We're getting to the final 4 parts.
We are.
Of season 1. So if you want to jump on Patreon, that's a great way to do that, and you can join us for those live discussions. One of our favorite things that we get to do monthly is that. And
absolutely.
So feel free to join us for that. Other than that, I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
And I'm Ben Pruitt.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.